Now, instead of making the usual bland introduction speech, I get to be up here on the stage interviewing my friend Marina Carr. Welcome to Galway, Marina.
Thank you.
It's so lovely to have you here, and she's here because her play, The Map of Argentina, which has waited quite a long time for a production, is currently to be seen in the Decadent Theatre in the town here. I went to see it last night, and it is absolutely wonderful. Some of the best child actors I've ever seen. So let me introduce Marina to you for those of you who don't know as much as you might about her. She's one of Ireland's best known and best loved playwrights. She grew up in Pallislake, County Offaly near Tullamore. Her father, Hugh Carr, was a playwright. Her mother, Maura Evelyn Brannock, was the principal of the local school and wrote poetry in Irish. So she grew up in a literary household. Her childhood was filled with writing, books, drama and music. She and her siblings built a theatre in their shed. Quote, "We laid boards across the stacked turf, hung an old blue sheet for a curtain and tied a bicycle lamp to a rafter. It was serious stuff. We even had a shop and invited all the local kids in. The plays were very violent." End quote. Marina attended University College Dublin studying English and philosophy, two of the most useless subjects in the world in every sort of way. They're not going to get you a job in a multinational corporation, but they teach you how to live. I did English and history and a bit of philosophy, but not enough. You can tell when you read her work what a philosopher she is. And that training as a philosopher is evident in her plays, which raise big questions about the human experience and condition. Her stage life began in 1989 when Ullaloo and Love in the Dark were produced in Dublin. She's been writing ever since to ever-increasing acclaim and award. To name a recent award, she was the recipient of the highly prestigious Wyndham Campbell Prize in 2017, a prize which not only confers distinction, but also a lot of money, something all playwrights need. She's a member of Aethona. Marina creates distinctive physical and emotional landscapes in her work, unmistakably hers. Her words range from the watery bogs of the Midlands and plays like By the Bog of Cats and Portia Coughlin, to middle-class Dublin and Marble, to ancient Troy, Hecuba, and to mischievous and formidable spirit houses, Audrey or Sorrow. And her skill with dialogue moves from Midlands infected colloquial to Southside Dublin to reported speech, but it's always unmistakably Marina Carr. In this, she's like the late lamented Tom Murphy, whose distinctive language and rhythms are instantly recognizable. And that's a sort of gift beyond prize when you hear a few sentences and say, that is Marina Carr, and that is always the case with her work. When she was asked once what her themes were, she said, I mean, what is there? Love and death, God. That's kind of it. It's about the angles you approach them from. She's acknowledged the influence of the great Greek dramatists of 2,500 years ago, Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides, on some of her work. But she has many literary influences, including the Russians, Chekhov, Tolstoy, and Turgenev. All of these past masters add depth and echoes to her plays, but while she has spurned the idea of originality, her created worlds and characters are undoubtedly original, in that only she could have given us the tortured Portia Coughlin, the passionate Hester Swain, the terrifying Red Raftery, or her very own Hecuba. There are almost 20 plays, including adaptations and collaborations, and we won't have time to go through them all, so let's pick a few to focus on today. Marina, my generation grew up with Tom Murphy's great plays of the 1980s, the Geely Concert, Conversations in a Homecoming, Baile Gongora, among others. The next generation grew up with your great plays of the 1990s, The May, Portia Coughlin, By the Bog of Cats. Talk to us about the genesis of those plays, all with strong women characters at their heart, but also very complex men. And they're all studies and portraits of troubled but intensely connected families. And they have ghosts. Tell us about that.
Oh, okay. It's a big question. Where do I start? Well, I grew up in the Midlands, so it was they were the first sounds I heard, the way the people speak there, the way I spoke there. Can you all hear me? Yeah. I knew this was going to be a problem.
A bit for folks. Can we try again?
Can you hear me better now? Okay. Where was I?
That is how people spoke in the Midlands.
That's how we spoke when I was growing up, and it's a very particular way of speaking, and it's a very particular part of the world. It's probably changed a lot now. I haven't lived there since I was 17, but when I grew up, it was very rural. and there were a lot of old bachelors around the place, and there were a lot of old people, and there were great storytellers, and they had marvelous turns of phrase, and it was a slower world. I mean, I feel so old saying that now. I feel a bit ancient myself, but it actually was a slower world. Like one of our neighbours, he used to sit in what he called his smoking saloon, and there was a car up on 4 concrete blocks. And he had his pipe, and you'd walk by in the morning and he'd be there, and you'd come back in the afternoon, he'd be there, and you walk by in the evening, he'd be there. And, you know, he was just there. He'd go in for his dinner. He was a farmer, but he had retired. His sons were running the farm now. So he had the whole day to sit in his smoking saloon, looking out at the lake. And just he'd have stories about the Shrevebroom Mountains. He'd have stories about the lake. He'd have stories about O'Connor Morris's castle, and he'd stories about his own family. They were an Ormond family, and he'd talk about once they owned basically the whole of Offaly and Laois, this kind of thing. And they actually had a French name, and all the land had been theirs at one point. And they were down to 80, 90 acres now after this huge. It was just so, the people were so interesting. Then you'd have old men up the road, and they were minding their ancient mothers, you know, and they never married. And then you'd have the old jackass in the field. And then you had my mother's school. She was principal of the local national school. So it was a school of 60 children, 2 teachers and 60 children. And just listening and talking and playing with all these kids. And so these were the first sounds. So when I started writing, I didn't immediately make use of these riches because I was obsessed with Beckett. So the first few plays were...
Greatly to your credit.
Well, I did my time with Beckett, shall we say, and I wrote myself into a corner. Yeah. And then I thought, well, what am I going to do next? So I said, well, go back to the first sounds you heard. And these 4 plays of the May, which was the beginning of it, and if you read the May now, you'll see it creeping in at the end of it.
Yeah.
And then in Portia Coughlin, that Midland voice is there, and then Bog of Cats and On Raftery's Hill. So they're the ones I would say are written in that vernacular. And it's just, to me, it was very, very ordinary. I mean, the word lyrical never came to my mind, and people have said since they are. And some people have said, well, we can't read them, because I had some of them published as I wrote them down, like the spelling and everything. I sort of made up a spelling. And then I had, because nobody could read them, I had to go back and standardise it a bit so people could read them. But a couple of them were published phonetically. And I have to say it was a revelation for me to write like that. And then I came to the end of that. And maybe I'll go back to it again.
I love the way you do a thing and you get fed up of it. Or not fed up of it, you come to the end of doing it, move on to another thing, and then you've done that all your life, really.
Yeah, and may circle
back.
Which
is really cool.
Yeah.
So the 3 women, the May, Portia Coughlin and Chester Swain, are all women who are pining in one way or another after men and wanting to manage their lives in a way that will suit them, or that they feel a deep need to have their lives organised, even if that means suicide.
Yeah.
They're willing to risk everything for this deep, passionate love they have for their husbands or proposed partners.
Yeah.
And that's a theme that comes up again in the Map of Argentina, which I saw last night and loved very much, especially the children, who are hilariously funny. Yeah. Holly and Jess are my favourite people in the theatre at the moment. Jess saying, "This is the worst day of my life." I mean, she's 8. She hasn't had much life. I think she's 8. And then she discovers that her grandmother has died, and that she too will die, and everybody in the family, but everyone in the family will die before her, leaving her on her own. You're just the meanest family for allowing me to survive all on my own here. And I don't even know how to cook. My mother won't let me turn on the cooker. I'm going to die of starvation. She's tremendous. I mean, she's really one of the great theatrical characters. But Deb, who's the female heroine of the Map of Argentina, with an ostensibly happy marriage and 5 amazing children, falls madly in love and describes it that way. I'm head over heels in love. And she's got to deal with this. She's got to. She can't let this guy go. She's totally honest about it to her husband, Sam.
Yeah.
And you've no idea as the play progresses how the hell this is going to work out. Because she seeks approval from her father, brilliantly played by Johnny Reardon. All go and see this, by the way, if you haven't, because it's tremendous. And he does not approve of what she's doing and sort of sends her away with the flea in her ear. But she sticks to it. And I won't spoil it now because the ending is quite surprising, shall we say.
Yeah.
But there again, we've got this matters more than anything. Not more than her children. That's what conflicts her, stops her from leaving and just buggering off. What is it that you see about female desire and longing that brings you to write, or brought you to write those plays based in your own home place, and now the Map of Argentina?
Well, I suppose, but you know, I think the map of women is still being made. You know, I don't think, and you know, we know what happened with the Constitution recently. Yeah. We couldn't figure out how to define a woman, what a woman is, or what her function is in the world apart from childbearing and making the dinner, you know, and making the lunches and all of that. I mean, all of that is changing, of course. But you know, you scratch the surface and you take away the few small advances of civilization, like women and work and bank accounts, and they've legal rights to their children now, which they hadn't, and all of that property and all of that has been sorted. But somewhere, somehow, and I think particularly in this country, maybe we're still carrying the scars of the terrible treatment of the female by church and state at the founding of this, after the 800 years, etc., etc. Yeah. And we tend to, I think, gloss over that a bit. And I was very surprised with the whole Constitution thing. And I'm not a great political reader or no way am I a commentator, but that stuck with me. And I think one of the things, and correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the things was they wanted to remove the word woman from the Constitution, and I thought there was something really off about that. So why am I always writing about these women? It's because I think I don't have much of a clue myself about what a woman's place is in the world.
Okay. See, the thing about them is they're hopelessly in love, but they're not helplessly in love.
Yeah.
They have agency. They're powerful creatures, these women. I mean, they're not in
their
any way
obsession
downtrodden.
Yeah.
They're making really serious decisions about their own lives and their children's lives and sometimes their husbands' lives, if they can. So they're quite strange in that way. They're not downtrodden women. No. They're not the stereotype. And the stereotype, I loved what you're saying, that we're still, in a way, writing the story of women in this country since independence and before. Yeah. And we are. But these women stand out to me as being absolutely determined that something will happen that goes deep into their desire for another human being. And they're not going to rest until they get that. And if they don't get it, they're going to die. I mean, it's highly Greek, let's face it.
Yeah.
That you are a Greek person.
Well, I'm obsessed with them.
You really are.
Yeah, I am.
And we'll be talking about that in a while.
Yeah.
But
it's also in the Irish mythology as well, these powerful women, isn't it? You know,
it is.
There is that. And I mean, the other side of, there is the inability to define what we are. But the other side of it, you have these powerful matriarchies. Yeah. Out of the legends, you know, and then you have the tragic heroines like Deirdre and Grania, I suppose, in a way, which they're going to be doing at the Abbey. But you've Maeve, and then you have Etain, the wooing of Etain, the story of Fand. You know, you've all these powerful stories, and in many ways, you know, the Greek plays. The women are fantastic orators. They're given fantastic.
They're given amazing voices,
aren't they?
Medea, who kills her children.
Yeah.
Who's a great favourite of yours in terms of looking at how she surfaces in some of the plays. It has some of the best speeches in the whole of drama.
Yeah, yeah. Amazing. Or Phaedra or Hecuba.
That's right.
But their endings are always tragic. They pay for the obsession or the transgression or the speaking out.
It's interesting that Deb says at the end of the Map of Argentina, she's with her lover, and she says, "I'm going to have to pay for all this."
Yeah.
She carries that sense of karma, I suppose.
Yeah.
I can't have this obscene happiness without some dreadful cost emerging for it, which again is a very Greek idea.
And it's also a very Catholic idea, isn't
Oh,
it?
absolutely.
The same.
Absolutely.
And our inability really to see all the nuance of what it is to be human, not just what it is to be a woman, what it is to be human. And this kind of binary view of the world of, sin and redemption, or right and wrong, or virgin or whore. And we're trying to, I think, dig ourselves out of those binaries. But I think we're still carrying an awful lot of it.
We are. It was interesting. Dermot Ferritter was talking just before us this morning, and he was referring to the fact that he's a historian. He looks at archives from the state and memoirs and diaries and so on. But he says the place you find out most about what's really going on is in plays and novels.
Really?
That culture, the cultural products, as it were, are the ones that get inside into the interior and tell you much more complicated stories than the official documents.
And the facts.
And you're a guide in that sense to some of what is happening in the interior world.
Well, it's written out of confusion.
I don't
and because I don't know.
But you write about complex men too.
I do.
Very complex.
Thank you
men.
for saying that.
And that is really important and interesting. Yeah. So, moving on to a very complex man, on Raftery's Hill, which was first produced in 2000 and caused a big stir. And part of the reason for that, Mary Raftery's TV series States of Fear had exposed terrible levels of sexual, emotional and physical abuse in industrial schools, and there was a big commission of inquiry going on at the time. The Kilkenny incest case, Sophia McColgan, all those issues were rising to the surface for us to contemplate, stuff that had been known about but was never talked about before. And you wrote this extraordinary play which confronted the audiences with a harrowing account of a family run by a patriarch who sexually abused his daughters and viciously neglected his son. And yet you have said in an interview at the time that I like Red Raftery. I know people might find that difficult, but I do. He may not have much humanity, but it's there. His humanity is that he realizes he's bad. That's really interesting. That you're looking at him in this kind of way. I mean, didn't people walk out of the Kennedy Center in America? I mean, Irish America, as we know, is the most sentimental place in the world. Forgive me any Irish Americans in the audience who are not sentimental. You wouldn't be here, actually, if you were. But they have a very rose-tinted version of what the Irish family is like. And the great and the good of Irish America were there when it was produced in the Kennedy Center.
Were you there?
No, I wish I had been, but friends of mine were there.
Yeah.
And they said half the audience walked out. They could not believe that such a thing could be happening.
I know, in Ireland. But sure, I was the disgrace of the country because it was during the Celtic Tiger.
That's right, and everything was supposed to be great.
And we were amazing, and there was this big celebration of Ireland and being Irish in the Kennedy, and I let the side down. Yeah. And I was told in no uncertain terms, in reportage here as well.
Right.
It was really...
I remember cheering out loud.
Yeah.
When I heard this news. I thought, good,
you're the only
finally, finally somebody
Yeah.
has said it's not like that. But where did that come from, Marina? I mean, it's the last of your vernacular plays. Does that come from your experience or knowledge of life in the Midlands when you were growing up?
Yeah, it does. It does.
Right.
There were always stories and rumours. You know, there were girls whisked off in the middle of the night and they'd appear 6 months later and, you know, back in school. There were a couple of stories like that. And there were stories about a couple of families, not near me now, but, you know, up in the mountains. There were a couple of stories. And you hear tidbits, you know, it's not based on anyone I ever met or knew or any of my neighbours or anything like that, but just you hear little things and then you just make it up, you know, and you just imagine. So
the seed of it comes on your radar locally from the stories you're hearing around you. Yeah. I mean, it is an incredibly powerful play, and Katrina McLaughlin's production of it in the last, when was it, about 4 years ago?
So Gary did the first one here in Galway, in the town hall.
That's right. Yeah.
And that was God, 23 years ago.
I know.
And then Catriona did a production.
And it was sensational, but it only ran for 20 nights, so very few
But
people got to
I
see
don't
it.
think people were ready for it with Gary's production.
No, they weren't.
And Catriona, I think maybe they were.
Yeah.
That
beautifully
we'd come to
cast.
terms as a society
Yeah.
with these things and these awful wounds that some of the population are left with, you know, and then how it's passed on.
A lot of stories had happened between 2000 and the production of the
Yeah.
Abbey.
Yeah.
We'd heard brave people like Sophia McColgan tell us what it was like. Okay, Hecuba, which is one of my obsessions.
Okay.
I love Marina's Hecuba probably more than any other play, except maybe Balagan Gora, which is, you know, way up there.
Yeah.
And I've never seen it performed on stage, boo-hoo-hoo. I'm now going to turn into Jess and say, it's not fair. Why have I never seen this on stage? I tried my best to get out of Sicily, whatever year it was you had it on at the theatre festival. Do you remember?
That, yeah.
I could not get a flight back in time for the last performance.
I was so honoured
So
to
I
hear
missed
that.
it. I
Imagine
was
someone trying to get a
raging.
plane back from Sicily.
Well, I would have. It would have been my pleasure. So, but miraculously and wonderfully, I had the chance to see Lynn Parker's film of Marina's Hecuba, of the production that I missed. 2019 was that year. Rough Magic, who Lynn's theatre company had its 40th anniversary earlier this year. You were there for some of the events. Great theatre company, and she showed the movie at 10:30 in the Irish Film Institute on a Saturday morning, and I went in thinking, at last I'm going to see it. And there I sat in the dark, watching Aisling McGuckin and Brian O'Doherty just be so intensely brilliant with your amazing words. I could have sat through it 4 more times if they'd let me. I am now, just for all your delectation, going to move heaven and earth to get this put onto the Irish Film Institute website so you can all see it, because that's where it should be. It is astonishing. And what, of course, it revealed to me was COVID did one interesting thing. People started to film theatrical productions, which can never by their nature be like a movie because it's on a set and it seems more artificial. But you could see every expression on these wonderful actors' faces. They were remarkable. Every single one of them was amazing. And you're drawn right into the center of this extraordinary production. So enough about me blathering on about this. All I can do is recommend it highly and say watch out for it on the website. It is a masterpiece in my view. So just for those of you who don't know it, because not all of you might have had the opportunity to see it, it's the myth of the defeated Trojan queen Hecuba, who's surrounded by the mutilated bodies of her children and her response to her captors, Agamemnon and Odysseus, as they prepare to arrange the slaughter of 2 of her remaining 3 children, Polyxena and Polydorus. Cassandra, the famous Cassandra who could prophesy bad things in the future, who's her 3rd child, she survives to be slaughtered later by Clytemnestra, another wronged queen. Now, in the original myth and Euripides' version of it, Hecuba kills the 2 children of Polymestor, who had killed her son Polydorus, and blinds Polymestor himself. Your version changes that ending. Why? And you also put into it an interesting relationship between Agamemnon, now the captor and master of Hecuba, and Hecuba, who is now effectively a slave. Talk to us a little about the way you transformed that story into a Marina Carr play.
Okay, well, I always thought that Hecuba got bad press, you know?
Yeah.
So the stories written by, or the play, the Euripides play, you know, obviously it's from the Greek point of view, the victors, and as we know, the winners write the
history,
the stories, or the histories. And I think they also write the myths too. And at the time Aeschylus, Sophocles and Euripides were writing, it was at the founding, circa 500 BC, it was at the founding of the Greek polis, the state, which only lasted 90 years. And so they were trying to start a country effectively, you know, and with that all the laws. So how do you, and one of the great ways was with theatre, you know, theatre was huge. You have the Festival of Dionysus, you have 16,000 people coming to see 4 plays in a day, over 4 days. So 4 plays every day for 4 days. So they'd start when the sun rose. And they would have the 3 tragedies, and then they'd have the satire play. And meat would be cooked, and the orphans would be paraded, and it was a festival for everyone. So one of the great ways, I suppose, of propaganda was you tell the stories, you know. So one of the plays was Hecuba, and she's an outsider. She's the vanquished Trojan queen, and they turn her into a bit of a monster. They have her blinding what would effectively have been her grandsons.
Yes.
You know, and blinding her son-in-law, and effectively killing, or having the nursemaids kill her 2 little grandsons. And so when I read this and I did a bit of research, and no, there's no way she wouldn't have done that. So I said, okay, let's think about that. So that was that. So change that. The relationship with Agamemnon, you know, I think Hecuba, you know, she was no saint. Obviously, she was a queen. She was a mighty queen, and she was running the city while her husband was fighting the Greeks. So with plenty of flaws, but not as flawed as I think she was made out to be. So I have her very human. Her husband has been killed. All her sons are dead. Her daughter has just been sacrificed. She's going to be brought into captivity. And all her clothes are taken, all her jewelry is taken. She's in the tents with the few women who haven't deserted her. And Agamemnon comes along, and he's kind of the suitor, you know, and he treats her, he gives her due. He treats her like the queen she is. He doesn't treat her like a slave, and he brings her to his tent, and she is the one who makes the overture. Yeah. After they have the wine and the food and the discussion, she's the one who makes the overture, not him. He's half afraid of her because she's
very scary.
Yeah.
In the best sort of way, you know, in the sense that she's powerful, she's haughty, she wants what's due to her as a queen. Yeah. She's not accepting a servile position, which is really impressive.
Not at all. So a lot of people might take issue with this, like, you know, sleeping with the enemy, etc. But the way I was thinking of it, in just a very human situation, a woman who has lost everything. Yeah. There's nothing left.
And I love that you would do that, because I think it's plausible.
I think it is plausible.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Now, the dialogue, you're going to read us a piece from Hecuba now in a moment. The dialogue takes the form of reported speech. I've never read a play like this before. And of course, I read Hecuba long before I ever saw the movie. Your characters tell us what other characters have said to them. This sounds weird, but wait till you hear it. It has a wonderful effect on the page. And why did you choose that way of using language?
But it wasn't deliberate, you know, it's feeling your way along. The main reason is I find the chorus in Greek plays incredibly difficult.
Yes.
Do you know?
That never struck me. Wow.
Yeah. Do you know, so it's they're very, very difficult to keep an audience's attention on stage. You know,
they can be bloody boring, you're right.
Yeah.
Greek chorus.
And they kind of interfere with the drama, and there's an awful lot of repetition in what they do. And also because we don't know exactly what they did. Apparently they sang and danced everything. Yeah. And of course we're dealing with it in translation. So I thought I'll get rid of the chorus. Yeah. But somehow the ghost of the chorus arrived into
It's amazing.
Without me ever... It wasn't deliberate. I think somebody else said that to me, and I said, "Oh yeah, that's a great explanation. I'll use that."
Tell the audience first where we are in the play.
So I'll read just the first speech, just because of the time thing. Yeah.
No, we've plenty of time. So
okay. So we're in the throne room in Troy, and it's Hecuba is in the throne room with her women. And the Greeks have broken through, and the rest of it should be apparent. Okay. So the throne room, Hecuba surrounded by her women. So I'm in the throne room, surrounded by the limbs, torsos, heads, corpses of my sons, my women trying to dress me, blood between my toes, my sons' blood, 6 of them, 7 of them, 8. I've lost count. Not that you can count anyway. They're not complete. More an assortment of legs, arms, chests. some with the armour still on, some stripped, hands in a pile, whose hands are they? Ears missing, eyes hanging out of sockets. And then Andromache comes in screaming, holding this bloody bundle. My grandson, intact except for his head, smashed off a wall like an eggshell. They're through the south gate, she says. They've breached the citadel. They're here. I say, put him with the rest. Put him beside Hector, his father's mangled body. She won't stop screaming. Shut up, I say, you'll draw them on us. I tell the women to cover her mouth. We have no soldiers to protect us. All dead or still fighting, trying to save their own women, children. And I don't know where Priam is. He went out a while ago. When was it? Last night? Yesterday? My women are putting perfume on me. Perfume. I swat them away. The smell of blood, wading in it. The tang of rotting bodies everywhere. Bodies that came out of this body. And I want to vomit, but there's nothing in my stomach. They've cut off our food supplies. And Cassandra's standing at the throne, that smirk on her face. I told you so, did I not tell you so? And I could kill her right now. And Polyxena looking at me, petulant, willing me to turn this around, make it all right, make sense of it. And I'm glad at least my little Polydorus is safe. We've sent him to Thrace away from all of this. And then a soldier comes reeling in the door, Priam's head in his hands, my husband's head. They've beheaded him in the great sky god's temple. I say, where's the rest of him? What good is a head? We can't bury his head without the rest of him. And the soldier says, I don't know, they've burnt the temple. Burnt the temple. The whole city's in flames, he says. And he puts Priam's head into my hands. I sit on the throne holding it like a baby. His tongue's hanging out, his eyes are terrifying, a ferocious death. I try to close his eyes. They're caked with blood, crust, dust. I can't close them. And the soldier is weeping on his knees, holding my ankles. All the men castrated, he says. Not enough to kill them, must desecrate them too. And I say, the women, what about the women, the children? The women too, they're killing the women, he says. All the old ones, the ugly ones, the ones past childbearing, past work. And the children, I say. Priam's head is oozing onto my dress. The children, he says. All the boys and all girls under 10. Why, I say, though I know it's a stupid question. Not enough room on the ships, he says. They're rounding them up, have them in the cattle pens. And I think this is not war. In war there are rules, laws, codes. This is genocide. They're wiping us out. And then there's shouting, clashing of swords, more screams, and Agamemnon is in the throne room.
Wow. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a piece of writing that so quickly encapsulates the absolute horror of war as that does. Yeah. It's just extraordinary, and it's completely visceral. You're straight into it. You're surrounded by mutilated bodies, and they're her children. Yeah. I mean, it's incredibly powerful. I don't know how you wrote this, Marina, because it goes on from there. Yeah. And gets worse in some respects.
It does. It gets a lot worse.
But it's incredibly, like you were all, I could hear a pin drop in the house while she was reading there. You can't take your eyes off it on the page. And when you get, I hope to see it in the movie version, or hopefully in a further production at some point, you'll understand what we're talking about here, that it is just, it hits you like a cannonball, this play, and you don't ever forget it. It's just remarkable. And thank you for writing it, for giving us that incredible story. Now, you are also going to read for us another piece, again, coming from your interest in an obsession with the Greeks. And that is a section from The Eye Girl, which is your version of the Demeter and Persephone story. Yeah. The mother whose daughter goes underground for half of the year. Would you mind reading us that?
Yeah. So this is the last section. So Eye Girl, I suppose it's touching on a lot of the Greek myths, but this particular one is the Persephone, Demeter myth, and most of you will probably know, but for those of you who don't, Persephone is captured by the king of the dead, Pluto or Pluton or Hades. He's all these different names. Pluton, I call him, and is taken underground. And Demeter, her mother, goes crazy with the loss of her. And eventually a compromise is made, and Persephone is allowed above ground for certain months of the year and must go back underground to the land of the dead for the rest of the year. So hence the seasons, they say. That's how we have the seasons: spring, summer, autumn, winter, and all of that. Okay, so I'll just dive in, and hopefully it'll make sense to you. So this side, there are two voices in it. So I begin with Persephone, and then it changes over to Demeter, and then it moves into another voice towards the end. Hopefully it'll be clear. And this is Persephone. A girl's life involves going down to the underworld for half of every year. This is what I said to my wailing mother, Demeter, when she was railing against Pluton, my blue-veined lover, my uncle, her brother. The Paleolithics got it right with their Ishango bone. 14 days out of 28, girls, women are not at home. Men, ever present, ever vigilant, are quick to judge. You're this, you're that. Are you a bit off today? When really I'm just in love with death, like the elders taught the girls in the cave. My disappearance is not personal. It's genetic. It's the way I was made, since my mother decided to divide the seasons and me in quarters. I've grown used to being Pluton's queen. I know he's my uncle, but he loves the darkness, the dead, all sleepers. And when my mother comes calling, dragging me into the light, spring, bounty, abundance, the giving day, all I crave is night, Pluton, rest, oblivion. A sort of rehearsal for demise. But Demeter calls, my darling, my daughter Persephone. I made you for light, I made you for laughter. I will never allow death for you while there's breath in my body. I will stop the world in its tracks unless you return to me. I will ungrow the corn and ungreen the fields. I will starve every hominy who crosses my path. I will block out the sun, the moon, the stars. I will create everlasting night. I'll rot the apples on the branch and the grapes and the vine. I'll turn to muck unless you give her back. I'll put a curse on your children and your children's children. I'll constrict the wombs of your women and shrivel the seed of your men. Have some pity. Daughters are the world's gold, gifts from above, meant for above, not below. She is innocent, my mother, the goddess of corn and morn. She has never known the seduction of the blue-black cave of Pluton's halls. His throne is azure, and when he takes you in his arms, he has gardens, asphodels, pomegranates, oaks, and 5 rivers flow through his purple fields. And he is full of sorrow as he welcomes you to his underland of starless and skyless caverns, all the dead wandering, gossiping. And the other thing no one told me, Pluton is a singer. His voice booms off the stone, and he's young, 18, hasn't aged a day since he was sent down to paradise. Some stranger, some archaeologists say 1 million years hence, excavating a doomed, silent earth, will lift our bones carefully, see the pomegranate seeds in our teeth, the terrible dentistry, the incisors intact, so Anthropocene, so perfect, and the pea brains, and the hyperaggression in the males, and the somnambulist women, and write in his report, it was all so predictable. They were Plutons from the start, never had a chance. All roads lead to Hades. You can't beat back the night. But touching the way her bones rest in the bones of his arms, human specimen he will record. Homo sapiens, ? Hominy, possibly, the old gods, that vanished tribe, stuff of myth, barely a trace of them survives. Thank you. There we go.
You are oracular, my dear. You
Oh.
really are. I could listen to her all day reading
thank
her
you.
work. It's just so
Thank
beautiful. We were just reminiscing before we came in that that myth is a very old one and much examined. Kate McGarrigle, the great Canadian singer, made a beautiful record called Proserpina, Persephone, which is Proserpina, Proserpina, come home to mama. Come home to your mother now. And it's available on YouTube if you want to watch it. It's the last song she ever recorded as a video before she died of cancer. And it's incredibly beautiful. But your words that you read just now, she transposes some of them into the song. How she's going to destroy the earth with her fury if she doesn't get her daughter.
Oh, yeah, and I think that's what they say, that's where winter came from. She stops everything on the earth until she gets the daughter back. And Zeus and the three brothers, Zeus and Poseidon and Hades, are all in cahoots. And they have to have a big conference because the sister Demeter is going absolutely ballistic on Earth. And they decide we better give her back for some of the year.
Better get the girl back.
Yeah, for some of the year.
That's all she gets is 6 months. Still, 6 months isn't bad, I suppose, when you're dealing with a cabal of extraordinary gentlemen like that who might do all sorts of horrible...
Yeah, but I think there's something in it as well. The Shango bone, Alwyn Fuere, I think, was telling me about that they this Shango bone they found, and it has all these markings on it, and they think it's to do with the menstrual cycle of women.
Good Lord.
And the idea of women disappearing for a certain part of each month.
Yeah.
I was just very interested in that, and the idea of the woman appearing and disappearing, Persephone appearing and I find all of that really interesting, and just the seasons. I don't even know what I'm talking about, but you might understand it.
She knows more than what she's talking
spring,
about.
so, the sowing the seed, the flowering, the growing, the reaping, and the dying.
Yeah.
And I think all our cycles are very, very tied in with that. But I think particularly the woman's cycle, I think, is very, very tied in.
Mysterious to men in all kinds of ways, and frightening in all kinds of ways.
Maybe.
Not all men, of course.
Yeah.
Men, no.
But just the idea of
don't have that problem.
I'm not here today. I'm down with Pluton today.
My friends,
and I'm really happy. Basically, I've taken to the bed.
With Pluton, who's only 18 because he hasn't aged a day.
Well, I kind of meant more the Catholic way. I've taken to the bed, my face to the wall. Don't come near me for a week. Yeah.
Oh, Marina, thank you. That was just bliss to listen to. I'm going to try and open this up to the audience, actually now, because we've only got 10 minutes left. So can we bring up the lights up there? Jack, wherever you are. Perfect. There you all are.
Oh, there you are.
You've emerged out of the dark like Persephone into the light. We have roving mics here, so if somebody wants to ask Marina a question, just stick your hand up and we'll come to you. There's a chap here. Just come down there, yeah.
Hello. Nice to meet you. Thank you. So in Heart of Argentina, we see a connection between the incidental music and the story, as Natalia plays the cello, which is featured throughout the soundtrack. Also, the Black Swan song is important to by the Bog of Cats. It's printed on the last page. Excuse me. So how important would you consider music to your creative process for composing a new work? And if original music is being composed for a new play, do you have writers and arrangers with unique styles in your network that you would think of to hire for that specific music? And this is speaking as an interdisciplinary artist, mainly a musician and composer.
Looking for a gig.
This guy's angling for a job.
Good man.
So I'm always interested in building relationships that allow me to collaborate with playwrights.
You've made your mark, sir. Let her answer the question.
Thank you. Yeah, music is paramount. Carol Kennedy, who I've worked with a lot, is the composer on the Map of Argentina. And he did the music for Hecuba as well, and he did On Raftery's Hill, and he's done a couple of other things. He did. I think he did can't remember. Yeah, and he did the May. So I love working with Carl, but there are lots of composers I work with. And I mean, it's just another character, isn't it? It's so important for mood. And if I had my way, I would have every play underscored like the way they do in film, because I think it can really alter and affect mood, and it can affect performances of the actors. It can also affect how an audience receives a piece, because, you know, I think the music it hits you somewhere differently. It goes in here first, I think, and we feel it first, and then we try and intellectualize what it is we're hearing. So yes, absolutely. Paramount, another character.
Yeah. Anyone else? Lady here in the middle, if you can get it. Keep your hand up so she can see you. Yeah, great. Thank you.
Hi, Marina.
It is?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? A lot of your characters are timeless, and indeed the scenes of war, they're so applicable, aren't they, unfortunately, today? But if you were looking to the present-day woman in Ireland, and indeed in the future, is there any character that you haven't written about, particularly from Greek mythology and tragedy? Or is there any aspect of a character that you struggle with, that you feel that you still have to complete that whole picture of women in Ireland today?
It's a very, very interesting
Yeah.
thought. I mean, I struggle with everything I write. So the idea of the woman complete, I mean, I think you're talking about a positive ending or a positive outcome, as opposed to the struggle. Most of my characters seem to inhabit some kind of struggle, and it usually doesn't end very well for them, or at best it's an open ending. Maybe that's where I am myself, I don't know. But I tend to, you know, when I'm writing, I tend not to really think that much. That might sound like an odd thing to say, but I think any artist in here will understand what I'm saying. I tend to do my thinking afterwards. You know, I tend to work from detail to detail, and there's no great big plan. And I get to the end of it. And of course, it helps enormously if you have a blueprint. Let's say if you have Euripides' Hecuba as a blueprint, so you have a plot line, and so you're working with that, or you're dancing with that. If I'm writing a play that is, you know, say for want of a better word, that I make up the plot myself, it is usually feeling my way along, and I tend not to know what it is I'm writing until I've got to the end of it. Now, I know that is not anywhere near answering your question, but the idea of the complete Irish woman, I don't know what that woman would look like, because I think part of being alive is its conflict, isn't it? It's struggle, it's sorrow, it's disappointment, it's the moments of joy that you grasp out of everything else that's going on. It's solitude. It's then it's communion. And we're so complex with these vast inner lives. And I suppose what's beginning to interest me more and more now, and I think one of the reasons probably why I wrote Hecuba like that, is I was more interested in the interior life of the characters rather than the dialogue. I've been reading a lot of Virginia Woolf, and I've been reading a lot of Joyce. And as you know, they're masters of the interior voice. And I was trying for a way to put that on stage and to make it interesting. And could you stage that? And then I did an adaptation of To the Lighthouse, and that kind of taught me how to stage the interior voice and make it dramatic. And actually, I don't know how many of you know To the Lighthouse, one of the most beautiful books ever written. But I had to put that on stage. And actually, when you put that interior voice into spoken language by the actors on stage, it is hilarious. Now, Woolf is a great wit, as we know, but you've no idea how funny it is when actors are actually saying what Mrs. Ramsey really thinks of Mr. Ramsey, or what Lily Briscoe thinks of Mr. Banks, or what they all think of each other, because they're all giving out about each other in their minds while they're being so polite. So what I've done was kind of flip it, so we're hearing what they're thinking about, because we all have these thousands of inner voices going on. So we present the mask, and we need the mask for the world to function in the world. We need the law to keep us all in line, bit of order, so we don't go around killing each other. And then we have these rich, contradictory voices within us. And it's how we navigate that interior voice with the exterior that we must present to the world, to civilization. So we can walk down the street, so we can get out of someone's way, so we can say, no, you first, so we can say thank you, etc., etc. But then there's this maelstrom going on inside each of us. And I suppose that's what interests me now, and how you navigate that in a positive way. And I think Freud talks about bringing all that into consciousness. So it doesn't become a damaging thing. So it means bringing it into your conscious thought, these crazy things we all think, bringing them into your conscious thought so you don't have to act it out. And so you put it to rest, or you explain it to yourself. So a lot of my plays would be the characters trying to work that out.
Yeah, absolutely.
I hope that's some
Time
kind
for
of
one or two more? Yes, here and here. Yeah.
Hey, how you going? Thanks
Hi.
for the lovely conversation. Kind of carrying on, you were talking about it a bit already, but I was going to ask, when you start to write something or start to kind of feel your way along it, as you were saying, would you maybe be reading about something beforehand that's taken your interest? Would you have kind of a moment where you go, I want to start writing? I guess what's your kind of, would you find you notice any consistent impulse to start writing, or anything that's impacting that? And then also, what's your relationship with writer's block? And would it be a friend or a foe to you? That's what
Okay. Yeah, it's very interesting. Well, it's different every time. Sometimes it'll be a line, or sometimes it'll be the name of a character that'll set me going. Sometimes it'll just be desperation to write. So no matter what I do, I'm going to write 5 pages today. And very often they'll end up in the bin, but it's really just keeping the hand in. And then if I get to page 20, generally it'll be something that I will pursue. But very often it's just, I'm going to go mad if I don't sit down and write for 3 hours. And then sometimes it's the pressure of a commission. I have to write. And that's a good thing too, or a deadline. There's that. And then, like most writers, I'm a voracious reader. I read so much that I forget everything, and it's all one big jumble. So, and I think all writers are like this as well, and then it comes out through me, it's all sifted through me. But of course, the whole history of writing is we're rewriting each other down the line the whole way. That's why I have a problem with this originality thing. You know, I think when you're 20, you think you're an original, you know. And then you get on a bit, you don't actually know it's been done before, and it's probably been done better, but you're going to have your own little go at it. My relation to writer's block, you know, I'll have days where there's nothing happening, but it doesn't worry me, because I'm very, very confident that it's a time thing. I'm not saying that what I write would be any good, but I know I can scribble something down and it'll get me going. And very often I'll read poetry before I write, or I'll read a bit of a short story, read a few lines from Shakespeare, I'll listen to a piece of music, all those kind of little rituals. I'll read a bit of Yeats, I'll read a bit of Virginia Woolf, you know, just get you going, get you thinking. Or I'll read one of Robert Graves' myths and that kind of thing. There are loads of ways I think you can inspire yourself. Or you sit, you know, in the evening after, if you've done a good day's work, you sit there with your glass of wine. Even if you haven't done a good day's work, you sit there, especially if you haven't, sit there with your glass of wine. But sometimes when the mind is relaxed and you just have the notebook, I'm not for any minute suggesting one writer would drink, but I'm saying sometimes a glass of wine and the mind is free, and you just jot down a few things, and then in the morning you have something. And a very good exercise, I think, Hemingway used to talk about this, always stop before the well is empty, so you have a line to start with the next day, which I think is really good advice.
A lifeline.
Yeah. So you have your line, just one, even if image or whatever, that'll get you going for the next day. So that's
Fab. One last question. Yes, okay, fire ahead. Yeah. Just wait till you get the mic. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Hi, I was one of the lucky people who did actually see that Dublin Theatre production of Hecuba, and I absolutely agree with Catriona that it was utterly memorable. It was absolutely fantastic. And I suppose my question is, do you find it difficult, as in personally distressing, to write that level of violence or distress in the plays?
Yeah, well, I do, yeah. I think if there's no tears in the writer, there'll be no tears in the audience, you know? I do find it difficult. And then it's done. And then I feel sorry for everyone who has to come and see my plays. They have to go through what I
Weep your eyes out.
Pon, it's your turn. Yeah, well, I do find it difficult. And I don't like watching my plays once they're done, because in a way, when it's written, it's gone from you. You know, it's not yours anymore. You know, that's why there's all this ownership. Yeah, my name is on it. But if, you know, I think if you're writing freely and naturally, there's something else at work as well, apart from your little ego, you know. Usually not. Usually it's strain and torture and failure. But when you've hit the note, you're usually being helped by
The surrounding deities, whatever they may be.
yeah. God bless them. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Lots of female goddesses are clustering around you, I'm sure, at all
I hope
times
so.
to make sure you're
I
okay.
hope so. I need them all.
Oh, we all need them, my dear.
Yeah.
We're out of time, I'm afraid, and I just want to thank you so much for coming and for reading for us particularly.
Thank you.
There's nobody like you. I mean, that's part of the thing about you. You've always gone your own way. You've never allowed anything.
Thank you. Thank you.
She does what she wants, and she does it magnificently, and there are years of you left, touch wood.
Touch wood.
Write loads more marvellous plays that we can all go to see.
Well, thank
all
you.
of you try to go and see the Map of Argentina. It's tremendously good. It's just wonderful stuff. And you'll have a great laugh at these fabulous children doing their thing. Marina, thank you again.
Thank you, Catriona. Thanks.